Welcome to the Rip City Community pregame show. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, joined once again by Dillon Sage, and we're going to bring you everything you need to know leading up to tonight's matchup between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Dallas Mavericks. They're playing the second night of a home-and-home series. Dillon, you want to start us off with the injury reports and lineups?
Absolutely. So for the Blazers, Nurkic is, of course, out, and Zach Collins. For the Dallas Mavericks, it looks like Dorian Finney-Smith is back in the lineup, which means Tim Hardaway Jr. is now coming off the bench as a gunner. Willie Cauley-Stein is out. James Johnson's out, and rookie Tyrell Terry is also out for the Dallas Mavericks. That Tim Hardaway had himself a game, so
he sure did. You can call that one.
Yeah.
So this means he's going to the bench and Dorian Finney-Smith is now starting. Is there any question that he would have lost his starting spot, or is that just
that's kind of just how
it's been
works? Yeah.
Okay. What does he bring that's different from
defense?
Tim Hardaway?
He's more of a defensive minded guy, and he can hit the occasional jumper, but Tim Hardaway Jr. is just a different type of scorer. But with the Dallas Mavericks and their need for defense, DFS is more of the person that they prefer to have the starting three spot.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to talk probably a little bit more about, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about defense. I mean, it's Portland versus Dallas. We probably don't want to spend too much time on defense.
Defense is we're trying to score baskets.
That is right. Well, I want to jump right in and talk about CJ McCollum after scoring a team-high 32 points on Friday night. How confident are you that CJ is picking up again right where he left off? Well, with a couple games to warm up. Do you think it's going to continue?
I think it will continue tonight. I mean, we just joked about it. Dallas doesn't really care about defense, so it's kind of the right prescription for a good CJ McCollum game. Fast pace. No one really cares about defense. I mean, CJ can definitely have another one of those games where it's just vintage CJ. So I feel pretty good about it.
Right. So how about long term? I know that you're somebody who has talked before, about regressing to the mean, or either regressing or progressing towards the mean. I mean, his performance seemed pretty much in line, a little bit higher on the scoring range, but not outrageously high compared to how he's been doing.
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to look at who they're playing against. There's so many different variables for a good game versus a bad game. I mean, in this particular matchup, CJ has a very positive matchup for him to score as much as he wants to, and maybe throw in some peripheral stats like rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, that type of thing. So I feel very good about his offensive output for this week, for this game. And I believe we're going against the Brooklyn Nets. So bet the over on both of those games, because there's going to be no defense played either way.
Well, I will say, I've said it a million times and I'll say it again. CJ is just so fun to watch. It is just so fun to have him back there just scoring in a million different ways that you may have never even seen before. And he's just making it up as he goes along. I just love having him back on the court.
It's the creativity that he brings. Dame and he are different as creators. Dame has a bunch of moves, but he uses them and gets that bit of advantage. CJ can take a player out of the play completely with his moves. So it's different. CJ is just so damn creative with what he can bring to a basketball court. It's so nice to have two creators.
It's so fun. That's so interesting that you pointed out, because you're right. Dame has certain moves that he does precisely and accurately every single time. And that the person who's guarding him is like, oh, why did I let him get me into that? I knew he was going to do that. With CJ, you never know what he's going to do, because it's something that you've never even seen before. It's just, oh, okay, now we're doing that.
Yeah, he kind of can just make it up as he goes. I'm going to hit him with a hezzy, then get him on the edge and get a layup, or behind the back crossover. Whatever he wants to do, he can do. Dame has some moves where it's just to get him that advantage, and he takes advantage of that and scores, or dishes it to an open trailblazer.
Well, let's move on, talk a little bit more about Dallas. The Blazers held Porziņģis to 11 points. He was only a 3 of 11 from the field. Portland had 13 offensive rebounds to Dallas's 5. So how do you think Porziņģis and the rest of the front line are going to respond to this?
I would imagine that Porziņģis scores more because in both games against the Blazers, he's had pretty off games compared to his standard of play. So I don't think that we're going to get lucky 3 times in a row going against Porziņģis. So I assume he scores more, but I think that we just have some more desperate guys for those rebounds in Robert Covington and Enes Kanter. So I still think we're going to dominate the boards. We just have that desire in the athletes. You know, I really cannot wait until Derek Jones Jr. uses that athleticism and gets like 5-6 rebounds a game. I know you're excited for the potential of that too, but having that athleticism, he can be grabbing some boards like crazy.
Yeah. I've talked about it in other places where I sometimes kind of like it when our rebounders crash into each other because that means they're all hungry and they can always, dance around underneath it and sometimes, figure out who's going to get it. But I would rather have them crash into each other than nobody going for it at all.
Absolutely. We've seen it where only one player goes for a rebound in a few years. So to have multiple guys go after it's huge. I mean, when we were in that Western Conference year, we were the number 1 rebounding team in the league. Like that, just being better than average at one statistical category can make your defense go from average to top 10. So if we can just crash the boards and make sure every Dallas possession is a one shot possession, it'd be a very good thing for the Portland Trailblazers.
Definitely something to watch for. Well, just like you predicted the last time we talked, Tim Hardaway Jr. had a hot shooting night. Is there anything that you think the Blazers are going to try to disrupt the shooters, or is that just something that they're going to have to accept?
I think Dallas is doing the most to disrupt the shooters by putting another guy in there for major minutes. I think that when Tim Hardaway is in, we'll have to defend him, but now that Dorian Finney-Smith is going to get his 30 minutes, that's like 10, 15 minutes less that Tim can get. So maybe the Dallas Mavericks have done it for us.
Wouldn't that be nice coming into Portland, coming into the Blazers house and changing things up on a night too? Yeah, it was, that was a fun game to watch.
Absolutely.
Like watching Dame and Luka take each other on and then watching some of the role players heat up. I just thought it felt like that was just a solid fun. Made more enjoyable by the fact that the Blazers were able, definitely made more enjoyable by the fact that the Blazers were able to win. Well, with the return of CJ McCollum, it appears that Anthony Simons is out of the lineup, at least for now. He's been a DNP coach's decision for the last 3 games. So first, can you talk about why you think Stotts is going with Rodney Hood and what Hood is doing well and contributing? And then maybe comment about whether or not you think this is going to continue or if we think we might see Anthony some more.
I think Hood is in because he has a really tradable contract. It's easily our most tradable asset right now. It's $10 million, and then it's a team option for the next year. So it is like a contract that is ending, whatever that's called.
Expiring.
I forgot that word.
It's okay. It's Saturday, Sunday afternoon,
Yeah, it's an expiring contract. So a team that needs a little extra room to stay under the cap could take a Rodney Hood contract and give us, a little something as a sweetener to help them stay out of the tax. So I think maybe it's to show that Rodney Hood is healthy enough to play basketball. But
so you straight up think that they're showcasing him?
Yeah, because if it was me, I would want to give Nasir or Anthony those minutes because I think those two have potential to show what they can do in more minutes. Rodney Hood and I are the same age. 29-year-old basketball players don't really improve with a huge jump. It's more of like little steps to improve their game a little bit. I want to see what Anthony and Nasir can do in major minutes. So I kind of think that they're just showcasing him, hoping to trade him at the deadline. I know the Blazers are rumored for a lot of wing players, so maybe Rodney Hood is there to, make the money work. So, young player Rodney Hood for
Mm-hmm.
that
Well,
next piece.
There are I've definitely heard that, Rodney being played for being showcased. I've also heard Rodney being played because the way Stotts coaches is that he just trusts some of the older players more. And this is kind of a key stretch to get through because they're actually winnable games and they don't want to take any chances and not win some games. So he's going with the more trusted older players. And, to be honest, I've been seeing, Hood play reliably. And I've heard, I've seen on Twitter or whatever, people complaining about Hood's play. I've seen him passing the ball at the right time. I've seen him reliably bringing up the ball, taking a little bit of pressure off of Dame or CJ so they didn't have to bring it up every time, a little bit more regular with his ball handling than like maybe Gary Trent. So are you seeing if it's really that Stotts is trusting him, are you seeing stuff that is showing that, he's doing well and capable enough to help the team?
I see the ball handling, and I get that Stotts feels comfortable with Rodney Hood as the secondary ball handler. But I feel like even if you feel a little bit more comfortable with Hood, I would just give those minutes to one of the two young guys. I feel like production-wise, Anthony and Nasir can do what Hood does. And it's no disrespect to Hood, but it's just I want to see what Nasir and Ant can do in larger minutes. So I get what Terry's saying, but I would love to see our younger guys play that extended role. And especially Anthony, we hyped him up and then kind of just dropped him to play to no minutes. I feel like if we want to see if he is a big part of that offense, playing in real games in real minutes is a really good way to find out if he has it or not.
I feel bad for those young guys, and especially a season like this, because one of the things that's usually the story is that show up in practice, show us what you can do in practice so that you can earn your minutes on the floor, but they'd never have a chance to do that when they're playing every other night. It's just sit on the bench and hope your name gets called rather than showing what you've got in a regular practice out in Tualatin or something like that. I think it's a bummer.
When Zach Collins wasn't getting minutes 3 or 4 years ago, I said on the Holy Backboard, if Popovich was the coach, Zach Collins would play minutes because he needs to see what that player can do. If Popovich was the coach of the Blazers, he'd be giving Nasir and Anthony all those minutes instead of Rodney Hood. It's just those two have question marks on what they can do, and we kind of read the book on Rodney Hood. But he is very solid. He knows where to be. I think that offensively he can be a decent linking player. He's not going to create the advantage, but he can take advantage of it once it's already created. But I still think Ant and Nasir can do that too. So
yeah,
it's confusing to me. I'd really love to see our young guys play.
I guess we'll know in a few days, right?
Because the 23rd, if I remember right.
The date is right around the corner. Yeah, but I was at least gratified to see that he's playing better, and I hope that either he finds a place that can appreciate him and use him, or that he continues to play well here and they figure out a way to work in some of those younger guys. Because I too am thinking about the future, and I would prefer to see those guys, but I can also just understand that argument about look, these are some winnable games, so we're gonna give Rodney a little bit of run and let him continue to work his way back in before we go into some of the more difficult games where it's they could throw in Anthony and he could have a high ceiling game and just be amazing, but it's just the outcome is a little bit less sure. So put him in and take a chance and let him go to town.
So Stotts is more comfortable with the floor, where I'm more comfortable with the ceiling of a Nasir or a Ant.
Yeah, and I think it's because, and I would think it might be because of these last 4 games are winnable. Like, not that the other games aren't winnable, but these are like more, before we like head into the gauntlet of Brooklyn and Phoenix and Utah, these games here are a little bit more in line with teams that they could beat. So let's just go ahead and go with what we know before we have to like bring in the tricks to try to steal a win from some of these really good games teams who are really hot right now.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question about one of our younger players, Gary Trent Jr. He's in a bit of a shooting slump. He's only hitting 30% of his threes over the last 5 games, and that's pretty significantly less than a season average of almost 39%. But he is driving to the basket more. He's gotten to the line at least once in the last 10 games, which is awesome. And he's actually attempting 4.4 free throws over the last 5 games. So it seems to me that he's trying to figure out how to make an impact even when his shot isn't falling. What are you seeing with Gary Trent? Are you seeing that same kind of thing?
I was, when we did this a week ago, I was like, oh no, he's not in a slump. He might be a little bit in a slump, but I think with his mentality, all he needs is one shot to go in and he's good to go. It's not when you have a mentality like Gary, I just think one positive thing and all this slump talk can be finished. He's just so talented as a shooter. So yeah, I do notice that he's driving to the rim more, and I love that because we need easy buckets as much as possible. Like, we're mostly a jump shooting team, so having a guy that's willing to drive to the lane and get 4 free throws a game is huge, especially when earlier this year he would only drive like once a game. So him trying to initiate contact is huge. Every NBA player has a little rough patch, so I think that he'll get right sooner rather than later. Maybe it's going to be against the Mavericks tonight. Maybe it's against the Nets in the next week because they're not the best defense. It's going to happen where it's just an explosive game for our man Gary Trent.
Yeah, I think Bubble Gary was playing on 3 different levels. Like, he was shooting, he was playing defense, and he was trying to do whatever extra thing was that was needed from him. And then I think watching him this at the beginning of this season, there was just a lot of shooting, and then the shots didn't start to fall. So I was glad to see that he's figuring out other ways that he can be involved in the game.
Do you think he's a little scoring dependent?
What do you mean?
The only way the way that he produces the best is through scoring.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like, do you see him developing, adding value in other ways? And I like to think that I do, because I'm very high on Gary. So I'm looking at the box score and I'm seeing that, he is getting to the line. I'm watching how he plays and remembering Bubble Gary, looking LeBron straight in the eyes and taking him on one-on-one defense. But I'm not sure, what the current Gary is on that continuum.
Yeah, I think he is kind of scoring dependent, but prove me wrong, Gary, and get those rebounds, get those assists. We kind of pegged him as a D&3 type of player, but as we've seen, getting defensive stats is really difficult if you only rely on defensive stats. Like, you might get a steal this game, you might get a block this game. It's kind of hard to track. So maybe he needs to focus on boarding a little bit more or diming up some of his teammates. He does a really good job of finding the open man in transition. So I don't know. Maybe I am glad that he is doing other things than just shooting, because that's what we're going to need from him in the future.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, Bubble Gary last year, Gary, he didn't have, okay, I know this is going to sound funny. He didn't have as capable of defenders next to him. I mean, like,
not.
being 29th in defense is like not, we haven't solved everything on defense. However, he is next to better defenders. And so he doesn't have to do that type of thing anymore, which is another reason why it might not be showing up.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many reasons for why, a certain statistic is lower or, why one thing is happening. I definitely think having DJ, Jay, and Robert will definitely take away from his opportunities to get steals and blocks and all of those defensive stats. So,
well, I'm going to be watching tonight to see who sticks on Porziņģis because I love it when he misses anything. And I hope you're wrong that he's not going to have a good game, that he's going to continue to not play well against the Blazers. So I'm going to be watching Covington and Jones to see who it is who's throwing themselves in the way of Porziņģis. Are there any matchups that you're interested in most tonight?
I mean, it's got to be Dame versus Luka again, just to see the two MVP candidates. And speaking of Dame, how nervous were you about his knee when Josh Richardson dove on it?
Well, I was glad to see that it looked like he just hit it rather than like twisting. Like that would have been like super concerning. I mean, I know those when you go down like that, bone bruises can be bad and take a long time to heal from, but it looked like it just was an unfortunate hit and that he was able to walk it off. Cross your fingers. Who knows? He's probably got this huge litany of things that are bothering him, but he's never going to complain.
Yeah, I was nervous. I was like, oh, crap. This might be bad. I mean, knee things with our best players, I miss me with that. I'd rather not be involved in seeing that. So that it worried me a lot.
I'm nervous all game, every game.
Anytime any of our boys touches the ground, you're nervous.
Well, I've gotten used to Damian when he's going to the bucket, like falling with style. So like, I'm not worried when he falls under the basket because I know that he's like rolling, like to protect himself. But when he falls in the middle of the floor, that is definitely more concerning.
And at least we didn't get hit in the face like 4 times, which is good.
Well, I think Robert Covington took a couple again.
Well, I just remember one.
Ennis took one.
Oh God, we just love getting in the face.
I don't understand what it is. I wonder how much of it. Like I felt like a pretty physical game last night, and I wonder.
Porziņģis hit 2 people in the face.
Yeah,
okay, never mind. I was wrong.
I feel like that. I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like teams know to be super physical with Portland, that they don't like it. I'm not saying that anybody, but some teams do like to be physical. It just has not really ever been that in my, recollection of the last, decade or whatever. They just haven't been as that into like they've been more of a finesse team, let's say, than a physical team. Shooting from 35 feet out is more rather than crashing into people.
It rocks though. To see those 35 footers hit.
It sure does. Well, Sage, anything else that you want to say about the game tonight? Or should we go ahead and leave it there?
Go Blazers.
Yeah, right on. Where can they find you on online?
You can find me on Twitter at DeSage. Holy Backboard is the podcast that I am one of the co-hosts of. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Himalaya Podcast. And I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/DeSage.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at TCBBiggs. You can find me hosting the We Have a Take podcast and the Step Back Sisterhood. And Sage, we're going to have to figure out where this is going to live when we do these. So right now we're sharing it with our friends and families and hoping that all our moms are watching it. And our friends.
It is on our YouTube page. Each of our shows have been on the Rip City Community YouTube page, and it's been on my Twitch. So
like and subscribe and hit that. What is it? Smash that like button.
Smash that thumbs up button, I think. But you can tenderly touch the thumbs up button too. You don't need to be violent with the thumbs up button.
I like your clarification on that. All right. Thanks a lot. See you later. Go Blazers.